Good morning, Rabbi Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Berachot. Today's Amud is going to be Lamed Zayin, Amud Aleph. We're still few lines up. We're going to start from where the lines widen in Lamed Vav Amud Bet. The Limud of Amud Yomi for Chodesh Cheshvan has been sponsored by Shahab and Shenaz Rabbi for the health and prosperity of their family, Shev Hatzlacha, and growth in Torah and Nachat from their children. It's also been sponsored for by the Hami family, the Ilui Nishmad Yosef ben Alagda Simcha bat Rachel, and Aliza Talia Sarah bat Chanoch Feivel, that their neshamot should have an aliyah. Amen. Yeah. The entire limud of Amud Yomi for this week has Amud Yomi and all the other learnings of KBT has been sponsored for this week by Dr. Omid and Kelly Shaye for the Hatzlacha and prosperity of their family in every which way this week. Amen. So we started speaking about the actual halachot of brachot. And what is the bracha? The Gemara asked on pepper. You have a pepper cone. What's going to be the bracha? Do you say bracha on it? Do you not say bracha on it? And the Gemara said, it's machloket. Same machloket the Gemara brought by ginger, right? If you eat raw ginger, if you want to eat, you decided that I'm going to have sanjibilin, what's the bracha? So let's see the Gemara. So the Gemara says, if you ate pepper, this is after the parentheses, you see two lines up from the white lines. Pilpli Rav Sheshat Amar Sha'akol. Rava says no bracha, lo klum. V'az the Rava l'tameh. Rava is consistent because Rava said first white line, kas pilpli b'yom the Kippuri patur. If you eat peppercorn on Yom Kippur, you're patur. Even though that normally in someone chas shalom eats on Yom Kippur, you're hayav karet. If you eat something that no normal person would eat, that's not considered you ate something. It's not considered that you ate food. Therefore, you're patur. Same would go with zangibila, with ginger, that if you eat it on Yom Kippur, you're patur. Gemara asks a question, Meisve. Rabbi Meir asked a very valid question on the pasuk that talks about orla in Eretz Yisrael. The full pasuk reads, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, untatem kol etz machal, and you will plant kol etz machal. What does kol etz machal mean? Any fruit of? Any tree of? Kol etz machal. Any fruit, any tree of edible fruit. Fine. Then the rest of it says, "Ve'araltem orlato et pirio." You will leave it 3 years as orla et pirio, its fruit. So Rabbi Meir says, wait a second. You told me fruit twice in the same pasuk. Why do you do that? You already told me "Ve'araltem orlato et pirio." So I know that we're talking about fruit trees. We're talking about fruit trees. So if you're talking about fruit tree, why in the world would you tell me in the beginning that this is etz machal? Says the Gemara, any yodash etz machal, from the fact that you tell me that this is fruit tree, and I know already that this is etz machal. So just tell me etz. So says the Gemara, Ela ma Talmud Romar etz machal. Why does the pasuk have to tell me etz machal, that it is a fruit tree? It's coming to add a specific tree that you would not have thought should be included, and the pasuk is coming to include that as well. And that's a tree that its taste and its fruit's taste is very similar. And what is it? This is talking about peppercorn. To teach you two things. A, that pilpel is considered a tree, a fruit tree, and therefore is chayav be'orla. You have to leave it alone for 3 years. And also to teach you that Eretz Israel is not lacking anything. It has even spices, everything is there. Because again, this is talking about when you come, when you come to Eretz Israel, you'll find all of these things. It's a land that you won't just have the bare necessities. You're not going to eat with poverty. You're going to have everything. You're not going to be lacking anything. And here it's coming to teach you that even the spices, even the things that make the taste and make life geschmack, you're going to have all of that. Says the Gemara. Now you have a problem. What's the problem? We just said that this is fruit, right? It is fruit, and you're chayav be'orla, it's considered food. So what? How in the world, if you eat this, you're not chayav on Yom Kippur? If it's not food, what's Eretz Yisrael? It's been praised by peppers. The Eretz Yisrael is not lacking anything, and it's chayav be'orla. So it must be food that is chayav be'orla. So says the Gemara, lo kasha. It's not a question. Haberetivta habiyaveshta. When it's fresh and juicy before you dry it, peppercorn is considered food. It's not so horrible. People actually, if you eat it, you make a bracha on it. Shakol. You don't make necessarily borei pri'ayetz because it's still not something that normally is eaten by itself, but still edible. So you make shakol on it. If you wait until it's dried, then the taste becomes much more strong. It's no longer something that people eat at all, and therefore you make what on it? Nothing. It's no longer considered a regular food, right? And therefore, if you eat it on Yom Kippur, you have eaten something that's not considered by the normal definition of people as food, and therefore you're not hayav karet on Yom Kippur. Amrila, Rabbanan lemeremer. Rabbanan told them to meremer, you said, we just learned a few lines ago that if you eat raw ginger on Yom Kippur, you're patur. And they asked meremer a question. They said, wait a second, Rava, we know that Rava said, hi, himleta. Himleta was a dish made out of zanjabilin. It was a dish made out of ginger. And yet we learned that the himleta, the atya mibehindua, that comes from Eretz Kush or India, actually, right? Hindu, it's hen. Sharia, it's mutar to eat it. Umevarachin aleha, meaning it's not bishulakum. And also, you make borei priyadama on it. So here you have a dish made out of ginger, and you're making bracha borei priyadama on it. So you see that it is food. So why do you say if you eat it on Yom Kippur, you're not chayav? Says the Gemara, lo kasha. Same answer. Haberetivta habiyaveshta. When it's fresh, before it dries up, still is edible, and you can make a dish out of it. And you will make bracha borei priyadama, but when you dry it, it already becomes a spice, which is very strong spice, and that is something that people normally do not eat alone, and therefore, if you do it, you are patur, and we will send you to some institution, right? Chavitz kedera, this is Gemara, vechen daisa, chavitz kedera and daisa. Chavitz kedera is something that would be made out of three main ingredients. It would have flour in it, oil in it, and honey in it, right? It was like some sort of hot cereal that they would make, and it was popular. So what is the bracha on it, right? We have these types of things nowadays as well, right? You have all kinds of hot cereals, and they have sweeteners, and they have different types of grain of flour inside. So what bracha do you make on it? Rav Yehuda Amar, she'akol niya bidvaro. Rav Kana Amar, borei minei mezonot. Rav Kana and Rav Yehuda, both of them are top students of Rav. We learn about the whole story of Rav Kana in Masechet Baba Kama Daf Kuf Zayin, how he, in a debate with Rabbi Yochanan, who halacha is always like Rabbi Yochanan, And still, when Rav Kana got into a halachic debate, he completely dismantled the shiur of Rabbi Yochanan. We're talking about big people here. Rav Yehuda and Rav Kana, both of them are top students of Rav. So one of them says, is Shakol Niya Bidvaro, and Rav Kana says, no, it's Borei Minei Mezonot. So says the Gemara, if you have daisa alone, which is just the grain, you cooked it up, according to everybody, it's going to be Borei Minei Mezonot. Because what do you have? Ingredients is 100% grain, basically. So 100% grain, nobody asks a question that's going to be Borei Minei Mezonot. That's fine. If you make a daisa, a hot cereal, that is made like chametz kedera, which has also oil in it, also honey in it, it has a lot of taste and a lot of character. So says the Gemara, then Rabbi Yehuda says shakol, because savar duf shaikar. This is the first very wide line. Because he holds the taste, what gives it taste and character is really the devash, is the honey. So the honey is ikar. Rav Kana holds Borei Minei Mezonot savar smida ikar. Rav Kana holds the flour is the ikar, and therefore you make Borei Minei Mezonot. Amar Rav Yosef quoted Rav Kana mistabra. Rav Yosef said halacha should be like Rav Kana. Why? Because the Rav, this is going to be one of the most important halachic elements of Perek Shishi, which we deal with all the time, constantly. Why is that? Because Rav and Shmuel de Amri Tarvaihu, Rav and Shmuel, both of them say, anything that has in it chameshet minei dagan, one of the 5 types of grain, wheat and barley and spelt and rye and oats, you make on it what? Borei Minei Mezonot. Now this is a big chidush because we're no longer saying anything that's made out of them is Borei Minei Mezonot, but anything that has in a mixture has the bracha is Borei Minei Mezonot. Now the Tosafot here say, meaning in other words, let's give you a practical example. It used to be very popular. I'm not sure if it's still popular. Captain Crunch, still popular for the kids, right? So what's the bracha? It has chamesh aminim in it. It does. If you take a look at ingredients, it has some grain in. What bracha do you make on Captain Crunch? This is halacha, by the way. Kol sheyesh bo mine Rav Shmuel damri tarvaihu kol sheyesh bo mechameshet haminim mevarech ala borei minei mezonot. Even though that the Gemara in few lines is going to destroy Rav and Shmuel, the Rav and Shmuel that we're going to learn in one line from now. Kol sheyesh bo, anything that has. That's exactly my question. My question is, what's the bracha on Captain Crunch? Guys, don't be afraid. Say it. Mezonot. Everyone says mezonot. David is looking at me as like, if you're asking that question, he's doing the politics things. If you're asking the question, must not be so simple. Anyone says shakol on Captain Crunch? Yeah, Baruch Hashem. What bracha do you make on schnitzel when he has bread? Shakol, but it has the berachot. Huh? How about the chicken nuggets? Chicken nuggets has a lot of mezonot around it.
What's the difference?
But it says kol sheyesh bo mechameshet hamim. Okay, so let's first see a Tosafot here. The last Tosafot on the daf here says kol sheyesh bo. If you take a look at the middle of the Tosafot, I want to read the whole thing, but it says this is 4 lines up from the bottom of the Tosafot. Ve'im ledabek be'alma eno sarich levarech borei minei mezonot. Right? If the flour is coming to give a taste, it's considered one of the parts of the ingredients because it adds taste to it, then it's going to be borei minei mezonot. But if you're putting the flour in merely to just keep the food together, not because of taste, because it has gluten and whatever, it helps you keep it together, then you do not consider that this has one of the 5 minim, one of the 5 grains, as ingredients. It's not even considered part of the ingredients because it's ledabek. It's not coming to add any taste or texture. It's coming to just keep it together. By Captain Crunch, the amount of things that they put in is not for taste. It's just, we call the company actually. So the only reason we put it in is to keep it and to give it the crunch that it needs and to keep the pieces still together. So therefore, on Captain Crunch, you make chocolate. So even though that still has grain inside. Now the question is, even according to this, schnitzel and chicken nuggets, still you have a question. Why in the world do we make shakol and schnitzel when it has grain, has a lot of topping, and it's coming actually for taste, right? It's not just for the ledabek is on top of it. The ledabek what? It's coming for taste. It changes the taste of the schnitzel or the chicken nuggets. So we have to talk about that. We're not ready for that yet, but I'm just showing you how important this one line is, because as you develop halachot of brachot, this is going to come back time and again in the halachot of brachot. Oh, sushi, you could write the whole kuntris on what the bracha is going to be. We haven't learned any of the parts of the halachot that you need for discussion of sushi yet. We're going to have the topic of tafel ve'ikar, what is considered tafel, what's considered ikar. We haven't touched the concept of what you like, right? Something that's chaviv lo. You have a mixture, something that you like in the mixture, does that have a say, right? We haven't discussed any of those things yet, right? You have fruit salad. What bracha do you make on a fruit salad, right? Or you have a food that, let's say you have rice and stew. Do you make 2 brachot? Do you make 1 bracha? You have cholent, right? So cholent, if you have grain inside of it, so not. Even though that the grain is not the majority, you have potatoes and you have, I'm not talking about the case that you have massive potatoes, but you have potatoes inside the mix, you have beans, you have sometimes, all kinds of different things that people add into the cholent, kishka, but you have grain also. So according to this halakha that we just learned, the bracha of cholent is going to be according to this that we just learned. Okay, so now whether or not if you have a massive piece of potato or a massive piece of meat, is that going to have its own bracha? We're going to discuss. It says the Gemara. So that's one piece of Rabbi Shmuel. Now, there's going to be a second halakha of Rabbi Shmuel that we're going to discuss right now, and the Gemara is going to go through it and completely shoot it down. Okay? So let's do this together. Says the Gemara. Gufa. Let's go back to this. Anything that has in its mixture, one of the 5 grades of wheat or barley or oat, spelt and rye, you make and it was also said a different similar halacha that Rabbi Shmuel both of them said that anything that is, not that has in it, but is one of the 5 grains, you make and you need to say both of the halachot. In other words, don't tell me why Rav and Shmuel say 2 things. Just say 1 halacha, one of the 2. You're saying 2 very similar halachot. One of them is that anything that it has in its mixture 5 meaning. The other one is anything that is one of the 5 meaning, is made out of 100% 5 meaning. So why do you need both of them? If they would only say the second one, that anything that's made 100% out of I would have thought it's because when you look at it, it is 5 grains. That's what it's made out of. So of course you're going to say borei minim mezonot. But if you have cholent, and cholent has much more beans and potatoes and other things, but it has also got some grain inside, I would say maybe you should make borei pri adama. Therefore, it needs to come and teach you kol sheyeshbo, anything that has in it, in the ta'arovet, in the mixture, chameshet min dagan. You make borei minim mezonot on it to show you the chashivut, the importance of the chameshet haminim. that unlike other mixtures that we're going to discuss the halachot of mixtures, unlike other mixtures, any mixture that contains one of the 5 grains, it's an override. They are considered be'etzim, essentially more important than anything else. Therefore, it overrides the mixture. You make borem minei mezonot. You don't go after the majority, for instance, right? In regular mixes, you go after majority, you go after something that you really like, you go after this, you go after that. There are different rules and regulations. By chameshet minim is an override. You have a mixture of chameshet minim, mezonot, right? Kamash malan, it comes to teach you kol sheyesh bo. Why can't you just tell me kol sheyesh bo, and I would know for sure that anything that is 100% is going to be borem minei mezonot. If you would just tell me only the part of mixture, that anything that has a mixture of 5 grains, you make mezonot, hava amina, I would have thought, kol sheyesh bo chameshet aminim in aval orez v'dochan lo. I would have said like this, Rabotai, pay attention to me for 29 seconds, right? I'll give you the word. So it means like this. I would have thought that if you have a mixture of one of the 5 grains with other things, you say mezonot, that's when it overrides and you say mezonot. But if you have rice, right, orez v'dochan, dochan is something similar to rice. Actually, we translate orez as rice. Rashi doesn't agree with that. Rashi holds dochan is rice. Orez is something else similar to rice. This is machloket rishonim. Generally speaking, we have accepted, the world has accepted that orez is rice, what we call rice, right? And dochan is something very similar. So orez v'dochan, how about if you have a mixture of orez v'dochan and other things? Does that also override? So I would say, well, from the fact that Rav and Shmuel said that the mixture of 5 grains is an override, I would have learned that the orez v'dochan, they do not override. You have a mixture of orez, rice, and other things. You'll go after the regular parameters of halacha of mixtures, right? But nevertheless, I would have thought that if you have 100% orez, a dish of rice in front of you, what bracha do you make? Yalla, mezonot, right? In other words, the chidush of Rav Shmuel is that the mixture, there is difference. In the mixture, there is a difference between 5 grains and rice. But if you have no mixture, if you have 5 grains, mezonot. If you have only rice, mezonot. The only difference between 5 grains and rice is when there's a mixture, then there is a halacha of override by 5 grains mixed with other things. That regardless of the amount, you always make mezonot, and the mixture of 5 grains with other things. But in the mixture of rice and other things, you don't override, and you have to follow the regular halacha. But if you have rice sitting in front of you, a bowl of rice, then you for sure make mezonot, I would have thought, right? Therefore, Rav and Shmuel have to tell you that no, rice is not borem minei mezonot. Rice is, as you said, a different bracha altogether, right? And that's the first time that the group over here is being introduced to this, because rice is mezonot. But really, rice is a big machloket in the Gemara, what the bracha of it is. So therefore, the Gemara says they needed to tell you, kol shehu b'chameshet haminim, to teach you their shita that Rav and Shmuel, both of them hold. If you would ask them, what's the bracha on rice? Rice alone, 100% rice. They will tell you, not mezonot. Let's see what the bracha would be. Says the Gemara. I would have thought that if you have rice, 100% rice, a plate of rice in front of you, we would have thought that you have to say borem minei mezonot on rice alone. Kamash malan, Rav and Shmuel come to teach you that nope, you do not make borem minei mezonot on rice. Only the 5 grains you make borem minei mezonot. La'afuke orez v'dochan, and orez v'dochan, even if you have it, even if you have it served alone, Lo mevarchin ala borei minei mezonot. You do not make on it borei minei mezonot. Later on, you'll see that they hold. You make on it shakol niya bidvaro. Right? So says the Gemara. Wait a second. Really? Be'ores ve'dochan lo mevarchin borei minei mezonot. You want to say that ores and dochan, you don't make borei minei mezonot on it? Now the Gemara is going to go on a rant about this and try different things, and at the end, the Gemara is actually going to upschlag Rav and Shmuel. It's going to completely destroy, and the halacha is not going to be like Rav and Shmuel on this element of ores v'dochan. Says the Gemara. V'hatanya, we learned in a Braita. Have you lefanav pat ores upat dochan? If they brought in front of you a bread made out of ores, a rice bread, rice cake, not rice cake the way we have it, but rice bread. You grind it, you make rice flour, you make bread out of it. What bracha do you make on rice bread? You make on it a bracha in the beginning and at the end, just like you make bracha on maaseh kedera. What's maaseh kedera? Maaseh kedera is basically you cook daisa, same thing as hot cereal. You make with the 5 grains, you make a dish in the pot. What bracha do you make on it, Benny? Mezonot and ala mihya. So it seems like the Braita is clearly saying on the bread made out of rice, you make borei minei mezonot, and you make ala mihya. So that sounds like a checkmate to Rav and Shmuel. It's a clear Braita. The Gemara says, we know what the bracha is on maaseh kedera. It's a Braita. The Braita says, "B'tchila mevarech alav borei minei mezonot, u'bassof marech alav beracha achad ben shalosh." You say mezonot and ben shalosh on maaseh kedera, and this Braita is teaching you clearly that rice bread should be like maaseh kedera. The Gemara answers, says no. It is like maaseh kedera, and it's not like maaseh kedera. It is on one hand like maaseh kedera, that you make on it bracha in the beginning and at the end, right? One bracha in the beginning, one bracha at the end. And it's not like maaseh kedera. Deilu b'maaseh kedera b'tchila borei minei mezonot. ולבסוף ברכה אחת בין 3, ואילו אחא בתחילה מברך עליו שהכל נהיה בדברו, ולבסוף פורה נפשות רבות וחסרונן על כל מה שברא. Now, in other words, the only comparison that the Braita is giving you is that just like by maaseh kedera you make a bracha in the beginning, you make a bracha at the end, by rice bread also you make a bracha in the beginning, you make a bracha at the end. But different brachot in the beginning and different brachot at the end. Which the obvious question that this begs is, okay, that, or even a more fundamental bracha, more fundamental question is, you just told me that all it's teaching you is that on rice bread, you have to make a bracha in the beginning and you have to make a bracha at the end. Why wouldn't I know that myself? Don't you make a bracha in the beginning and at the end of everything that you eat? Why do you have to teach me that by rice bread? Why can't you just tell me that by everything and anything that you eat, you have to make a bracha? That we know already. What's the chidush of rice bread? Right? So the Pnei Yehoshua asks this question. He says, it's a little complicated, the answer that he gives, but he says, there would be a havamina to say that because you made you made bread, I would have maybe thought that you have to make hamotzi, or at least bikat hamazon. You eat pat. It's bread. Who cares what the bread is made out of? If it's bread, you're using it for your main meal, and it's bread, you should make bikat hamazon on it. So that's why the Gemara compares it with maaseh kedera. Maaseh kedera also, because it's made out of grain and it's very fulfilling and satisfying, there would be the hava amina to say you should make birkat hamazon on it. And the halacha is really what? That no, you don't make birkat hamazon. You make one bracha. Me'en shalosh. Me'en shalosh is one bracha. So therefore, the Gemara here is coming to teach us that even though that this is quote unquote pat, quote unquote bread, you make one bracha at the end, which is borei nefashot rabot. Right? Now, what does borei nefashot rabot, by the way, mean? We don't pay attention to what we say. The Tosafot in the top of Amud here, they break down the bracha borei nefashot rabot vechesronan. That borei nefashot rabot vechesronan means things that the soul needs to survive, right? Like lechem umayim she'i efshar belohem, like water, like bread that you can't live without them. It's the main staples of life. It's the main staple of life. It's not something that you could live without, right? But there are other things that are just geschmack, but they're not a necessity for life. They're not a staple. Like, cookies and cake and sweets and whatnot, sugar and spice and everything nice. Those you don't need necessarily to live. But Hashem has given you al kol ma shebarata lahayot b'hem nefesh kol chai baruch ha'olamim. That you have created not just the necessities, but you have created a beautiful world, right? Well, Rabbi Victor Miller used to say, the fruits could have been black and white. But Hashem has given it color, beautiful, and it's juicy and it's sweet, right? Has made it pleasurable for us. So that's the second element of thanks that we give. That's not only the necessities that we take in, all the vitamins and minerals and things that are needed for our survival, but it's also very sweet and geschmack and beautiful and pleasurable. Okay, says the Gemara. So Rav and Shmuel hold that you say Shakol Niya Bidvaro and Borei Nefashot on rice. Okay, that's the Shita of Rav and Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Ve'orez lav Maaseh Kedera. You want to suggest that Orez is not considered Maaseh Kedera? Ve'atanya, we learned in a clear Braita not like that. Eluhen Maaseh Kedera. These are Maaseh Kedera. Chilka, Targis, Soled, Zariz, Varzan, Ve'orez. Now, these first four are grain divided to different pieces. Chilka is wheat divided to two pieces, right? And targis is when you break it to smaller pieces. It's three pieces every grain. So, Zariz Arsan is 4 and 5 pieces. Solid is, of course, sifted flour, and orez is rice. So you see, orez is considered Maaseh Kedera. And Maaseh Kedera, we just learned in the halacha that the bracha is what? So we have a clear braita that says orez is Maaseh Kedera. Says the Gemara, no. Don't make a mistake. There is one Tana, one. We don't pass in like him. That holds that rice, orez, is considered one of the grains. So much so that if you eat it on Pesach, you are chayav karet. Right? Hashtag Sfaradim. So that's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that orez is mindagan, is mamash like one of the 5 grains, including Pesach halachot. We don't pass in like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So get out of here, basically. Don't give me that braita. That braita is Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So of course you're going to make one minute mezonot. Of course you're going to make ala mechia. And if you make bread from it, you'll make hamotzi and brikad hamazon. So that shita, put it aside. Don't ask me from that. That's what the Gemara says, right? Mani Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, the Tanya that the Braita says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer. He used to say, Orez mindaganu. Orez is one of the types of grain, v'chayavin alaf al chametzo karet. And if you make chametz out of it on Pesach and you eat it, you'll chayav karet. It's mamash like grain. V'adam yotzeh bo yedechovato b'Pesach, and you could make matzah out of it. And you will be yotzeh yedechova matzah on Pesach if you eat it. Ava Rabbanan, but nobody else agrees with him. Rabbanan, lo. So the Gemara says, what? Rabbanan, lo. V'hatanya. We learned in a different Braita. You think that's all I got? I have more. There's another Braita. The Braita says, if you chew on a chita, on wheat, you make borei briadama. This is like, puffed wheat maybe. If you grind it and you bake it, and then you cook it afterwards, you take pieces of bread and you cook it in a pot with soup, then if you see the pieces of bread still in the soup, they haven't dissolved, you make bracha on it, right? But doesn't lose its bracha. You make hamotzi, and afterwards you make gimel brachot, birkat hamazon. If they fell apart and the pieces are not as big as kazait, they basically dissolve. Then in the beginning you say borei b'nei mezonot, ulbasof marech ala bracha achad mein shalosh. Then you say mezonot and ala michya. Hakoseset ha'orez. If you eat orez, rice, mevarech ala borei pri adama. You make borei pri adama. Tachano afa'u b'shelo, first white line. If you grind it and you bake it as rice bread, and then you cook the rice bread, afal pisha perusot kayamot. Even though that the perusot are still, the pieces are intact, you make in the beginning borei minei mezonot, ulbasof mevarech ala bracha achad mein shalosh. You in the beginning say mezonot, and at the end you say what? Mein shalosh. This cannot be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, because if it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, if the pieces are intact, what would you make on them? Hamotzi. So it's not Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and yet it is Rabbanan, and he says you make borei minei mezonot and mein shalosh. So you see from here that Rav and Shmuel are wrong, and you don't make shakol niya bidvaro on it. On that, the Gemara says tiyufta, the Rav Shmuel tiyufta. It can't be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and therefore you see that Rav Shmuel who say you say shakol and rice are wrong, and the Gemara concludes that they are wrong. We're going to discuss B'ezras Hashem Rashba and Rabbi Gaon tomorrow morning as to what the halacha is when it comes to this, because the Gemara says it's tiyufta, but the Gemara also seems to suggest that we have to say ala michya on rice, which we know we don't make it. So we'll discuss the Rashba and Rabbi Gaon B'ezras Hashem in the days to come.